AI data centers are pulling so much electricity, they're practically melting. But analog devices just proved they can cash some massive checks to keep the grid alive. It's August 19th, 2026, and on today's Earnings Unscripted, we're unpacking a monster Q3 for ADI. They just shattered their own ceiling, pulling in $4 billion in quarterly revenue.
Which is up 40% year over year, and adjusted EPS came in beautifully at $3.45. You look at the cash generation, free cash flow essentially doubled since last quarter. The operational leverage is frankly staggering. But the market reaction was completely disjointed.
Right. The tape was wild. It gapped up hard pre-market, gave all of it back during the session, and then kind of limped to a totally flat close.
Yeah, the algorithms bought the top-line beat in the dark, and then the human market woke up and faded the entire premium.
Standard post-earnings exhaustion. Though, quick aside, before anyone decides to actively trade that kind of brutal intraday chop, please remember our chatter here is strictly personal opinion and definitely not professional financial advice.
Buy the rumor, fade the podcast.
Absolutely. But leaving the ticker aside, the actual hardware business is fascinating right now. They make these analog chips, the power management components that connect AI software to physical reality.
Right, and they possess immense pricing power because of the physics involved. Roche gave a really beautiful example on the call today. He explained that if they squeeze even a tiny fractional improvement out of power conversion efficiency, the math goes exponential. You actually cut the resulting waste heat by roughly half.
Wait, I want to make sure I get that. So just slightly optimizing the electrical intake drops the heat output that dramatically?
Exactly. A slightly less efficient legacy system loses significantly more energy as pure heat. So for a hyperscaler building out a gigawatt data center, eliminating that heat means you don't buy anywhere near as much cooling infrastructure. You save tens of millions of dollars just in thermal management.
Wow. Okay, that's the tell then. That's why their communication segment is completely transforming. I saw data center sales just ate that entire division. It's 80% of their communications revenue now.
The legacy telecom equipment is basically an afterthought at this point. The entire engine is AI infrastructure.
Okay, well, that explains why they bought Empower Semiconductor this quarter, but I need to understand why they deliberately chose to drain $1.5 billion in cash just to stick power regulators directly into the processor package.
Well, look at the geography of a modern AI motherboard. Historically, power gets managed outside the main chip. You've got these massive regulators stepping down voltage, and then that power travels across the physical board to the processor. They drained their cash balance down to roughly $2.3 billion to buy Empower because that technology lets them skip the commute entirely.
Okay, wait. So they're just shrinking the external power brick and gluing it onto the processor itself?
No, that's not quite it. It's a completely different architecture. Think of it more like a vascular system built inside the actual silicon package.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. You have to remember what CEO Vincent Roche said on the call today. He said, and I quote, "The fact that data center capacity is now measured in gigawatts rather than flops and tops underscores one of the most defining challenges of the AI era. When you measure performance in gigawatts, physical distance is the enemy. Moving power across a circuit board loses energy. Empower's technology puts the regulation right next to the logic cores."
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's purely about proximity. By bypassing that board travel, they're eliminating the transmission loss. That makes total sense. And that directly feeds into the energy mathematics we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And it completely rewrites their addressable market. They bumped their internal estimates for their 2030 data center SAM to over $100 billion.
Just from selling in-package power and optical switching? That sounds massive.
It's huge. They've introduced this new metric that honestly blew my mind. Roche basically said, quote, "Each gigawatt generates a $1 billion to $1.5 billion analog SAM."
That's wild. They aren't even modeling sales based on chip volume anymore. They're literally forecasting revenue based on how much raw electricity a hyperscaler can plug into the wall.
Right. It's the ultimate pick and shovel play. You want to build a gigawatt AI cluster? Hand over $1 billion for the analog plumbing. But, I mean, this is where I start looking for the catch.
There's always a catch. Let me guess. Supply chain lead times again?
Close. Manufacturing reality. The gross margin for the upcoming fourth quarter is guided up to around 74%. That's phenomenal. But Richard Puccio, the CFO, was very deliberate in pumping the brakes.
I mean, how much higher can margins really go anyway?
That's exactly the problem. Puccio flat out said he doesn't think there's much room to get more margin accretion out of factory utilization. They're running the physical plants as efficiently as possible right now. Plus, you've got inflation lingering.
So they're hitting a physical ceiling. Like, the technology has endless demand, but building the actual things just tapped out its efficiency curve.
Pretty much. They've got seasonal factory shutdowns coming in Q1 anyway, so that doesn't help. But it means that incredible operating leverage we saw this quarter, it's probably flattening out. They can't rely on fixed cost absorption to cover up raw material inflation forever.
Okay, so if the factories are maxed out and inflation is a guaranteed headwind, how do they justify keeping that innovation premium heading into a cycle like this?
They justify it because they aren't selling commodities. Customers have absolutely no choice but to pay up. Like Vincent Roche said on the call, and I quote, "The origin of the high gross margin structures is the innovation premium that we attract, so our job is to keep that premium moving." They're literally saving hyperscalers tens of millions in cooling costs per facility.
Right. It's that gigawatt math we talked about earlier. If you solve the biggest power bottleneck in the data center, you get to dictate the price. So assuming the customers keep paying, what are they forecasting for the fourth quarter?
Management's definitely projecting strength. They're guiding for fourth quarter revenue right around $4.3 billion, and they explicitly reaffirmed that gross margin should tick up to that incredibly rich level we discussed earlier.
That's just wild. They're basically printing margin right now. So is there any actual risk on the horizon here, or is this just a smooth ride for the next few years?
Well, there's always risk, even when the top line looks flawless. I'd keep an eye on channel inventory for one. The executives mentioned customers are deliberately running very lean, like below their target weeks. Nobody wants to hold extra stock right now. And secondly, they got this unresolved IRS dispute buried in the filings.
Wait, an IRS dispute? Over what exactly? Did they mess up the acquisition taxes?
No, it's older. Transfer pricing. From, I think, a few years back. It's an assessment of roughly $267 million. They haven't recorded any liability for it yet because they're vigorously defending it, but that's a chunky number to just have hanging in the background.
Yeah, that's not exactly pocket change, even for a company throwing off this much cash. It feels like they're executing perfectly on the AI infrastructure front, but they've still got these very real physical ceilings at the factories, plus the legal loose ends.
Precisely. The technology is phenomenal, but physical reality and tax codes are starting to push back.
Turns out you can't just power the AI revolution on pure optimism. You actually need the copper and the cash to cooperate. I guess we'll find out next quarter if the factories can keep the pace.
Should be interesting.
See you next time. If you're having fun with these quick debriefs, maybe tap follow on your podcast app so you don't miss the next one. And just to pull the curtain back, our voices and this exact conversation are entirely synthetic, built by AI to turn today's earnings call into audio the very same day. Shoot your feedback or ticker requests over to earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or find our X link down in the show notes. Thanks for hanging out with us.